Something that I never catch when it's white, it's always pink, is the firelight. And this year I caught it. But look how big those flowers are. That is just huge. That is one bloom. But that is just the coolest color. Isn't that beautiful? That's definitely a color that I want. Look how big that is. That's a really yellow one. That's a beautiful one though. And these stay white longer. It's called Dolly. I just love that. That looks so cool. Well, if you've seen our gardens, you know I like hydrangeas, and they are starting to rip. The paniculatas this second week are really starting to come into their own. And if you think what this yard looked like when we moved in, it was all grass. There was no foliage except the large trees that were really planted when they built the house. But look at that. We've got over 80 hydrangeas just on the edge here alone. And a lot of these beds have these large hardy hibiscus that have this really purple foliage. I just love. The red blooms are not blooming yet, but the whites have already started. And we've got vanilla strawberry back here just from the start. And that is one of my favorites. I saw an 18-inch bloom on a vanilla strawberry at the Botanical Gardens in Chicago. And I've liked vanilla strawberry since. It is just one of the best you can plant. I've got a whole bed dedicated to this, but I've got these sporadically all over the yard. And vanilla strawberry is one of those hydrangeas that's going to have panicles on panicles. So you've got a little panicle there, but when they stack up, they just turn into a huge bloom, and that is going to protrude another probably 10 inches out. So that is going to be a monster. But they're super white right now. They'll turn pink from the top down, and it's just a beautiful flower. But out here, I've got I think 70 some limelights, and I've got these finger beds that were supposed to be where I could walk through them, but I am not able to walk through this one. It's so tight. But look how bright and chartreuse limelights are. It is just a beautiful flower. And if you look down the middle, they've got a little white dot that I've never noticed in all these years. I've never noticed the little dot between the flowers. I think that is such a neat attribute to some of these hydrangeas. I don't know if all of them have it. I'm actually going to check, but that is such a pretty structure. It's just the color, the delicate nature of that little dot in that beautiful flower, and then the hundreds and thousands of flowers that are all over these hydrangeas. But I can't walk through this one very well. But they've got the hardy hibiscus. It's almost like a big castor bean flower, but they've got flowers getting ready to bloom on that one. Just a monster. And this white one is a beautiful one. It's got a stamen that kind of protrudes up like a fingers on a hand, but it's got a leathery texture, and they'll bloom today. That'll fall off or close up and fall off tomorrow. And the next guy will bloom, and then the next guy will bloom, and they'll do that all summer now. They bloomed super early this year. They came up in June. They usually don't even come up until the end of June, but that just means they're going to bloom longer, and we'll have more color. But at this corner of the yard, you can see how much has changed. Look at that. That is just awesome. You've got this dark purple against the light chartreuse, and then you've got the bubblegum back there. That is just amazing. I think that is just beautiful. And I made these so that you could have a visual line down the middle and not completely block the house out. But you do get some cover from the yard and a little bit of privacy depending on what angle you're at. But if I'm walking on this edge, you can just see behind me what is going on, and cars are starting to slow down as they go, and I do too when I'm driving by here. But the bubblegum, Super Tuny Vista bubblegum, is one of my favorites. Look at that. Look how much it's changed though. That was just a bunch of nothing when I moved in. And it's not professional, but it is my attempt at making something interesting to look at, and that is interesting to look at. We've got Verbena bonariensis in the middle of it, and this is the proven winner's variety, and I think it's smaller, less leggy. It's definitely more manicured look. but I like the old school, I think, maybe better. I'll give it another month, but it's just it's not exactly what I had pictured. I thought it would really make that pink pop, but there's nothing except chartreuse that makes that pink pop anymore. The sweet potato vine really has got a nice color to it, except for the ones the deer pick off. The deer don't seem to eat the super petunias, but they really like sweet potato vines. And what I mean by the proven winners variety of Verbena bonariensis against a project that I'm going to be doing after this, which I'll show you. This will really pop once I get this cleaned up. But this is the original Verbena bonariensis that's from South America, and it will look like that all summer. There is not many plants that are better than that. That is such a cool wispy look, but this bed definitely needs some attention. So after this tour, we're going to clean that up. But we've got just a monster nursery bed of hydrangeas here. These are limelights here on the corner, and those are 8 foot plus, and these don't have drip going to them, but they're a little bit ahead of the finger beds that are by the road, I think. And Ripley's got something, but the grasses look nice. The quickfire looks nice. That's been blooming for over a month, and it has new blooms on it still. Look at that big hornet. Yikes. But that's a big bloom that just it's still white, so it's a new one, and then it'll turn pink. But I don't love them when they're pink. But something that I never catch when it's white, it's always pink, is the firelight. And this year I caught it. It was white a few days ago. It's getting a little bit of pink, so it turns pink fast. But look how big those flowers are. There was some debate online about whether this was a firelight or what, and I just couldn't figure it out, because it's always pink when I do it. There's Ripley down there. But I know on the edge here I've got a firelight, and it's got the same large leaf petals as that other one, and so that one's a firelight too. But there's a big vanilla strawberry back there. It's approaching 9 foot, but it's got another 2 weeks before it's at its prime size, which is just huge. I love vanilla strawberries, and we've got a bed dedicated to those. We've got a bed dedicated to really all my favorites, and one of them is this Pinky Winky. I planted this from a quart, and it is a monster now. It's 8 foot, and it's not quite there yet, but it's got panicles that are so complex. It's got the quick fire kind of vibe to them, to where they're little balls. Not all of them will bloom, but it's got a real sharp point compared to a quick fire. It's more of a globe, and I think that is just awesome. Look at that against the Monarda. Look at that. And then you've got, I mean, some of these will be 18-20 inches, which is just huge for anything. But the size of this one, and it's kind of getting a little oddly shaped this year, but that's a big hydrangea. And that's that quick fire we just looked at back there that's white. It'll be white for maybe a few more days, and then it'll turn super dark. But this is a big hibiscus. I don't love the pinks as much. I like the reds, but look at the stamen on that. It is just amazing. It's almost like fingers that are pointing up. I want to touch it. I want to see if it's fuzzy. It's kind of, I don't know what to think about that. But we've got more vanilla strawberries back here, and a big hibiscus. But this is a vanilla strawberry, and it's got vanilla strawberry's got the red stems on the new growth, and all paniculatas pretty much bloom on new growth except the oak leaves, of course. But that in 2 weeks is going to be a rock star, and I just love rock stars. Big limelights, big bees of Monarda. Look at that guy. He is just a pig. Just a pig. But when we get to my dedicated beds, I've got probably my favorite one right now is the Pinky Winky bed. And in that bed we've got Hoopla Vivid Orchid, Super Tunia, And I didn't want this, but my wife got it, and it's one of my favorites. I think it's just a beautiful pop of color against really the paniculatas of all varieties. But this is a pinky winky, and it's a smaller bush. We just put it in last year, but it's almost got bigger blooms than my other one. So we've got water going to it, and it's just really looking good. That vivid orchid, and this is a really interesting hibiscus. I can't remember what it's called, but it's got really tropical colors, I think. So I don't know if it really goes in this bed, but that's where it lives. And against the color of that Supertunia Vista bubblegum and the silverberry, which is really poofed out. This is one plant. That's a 2.5 foot wide plant. Those look great. And then we've got more out here, but if we're talking Supertunia, I think my second, or tied with first, is the saffron finch. And the saffron finch, the spirit of what I was trying to do here was have that amethyst mist superbena with the yellow coming through, and some of it is working. But that is just the coolest color. Isn't that beautiful? That yellow is just like nothing I have seen. And we've got some that have been casualties from the Ripley Highway. She runs through here. Some are doing really well, and they really poof out. So I think that's definitely a color that I want. That amethyst mist is really nice. And then in the front, we've got a big weeping red bud with a vanilla strawberry struggling back there. The arborescens hydrangeas are kind of at the end of their life, but once I get to paniculata season, that's where it's at for me. We've got more hoopla vivid orchid here in the front, and tennis racket, it looks like. But look at that one. I said that arborescens are gone, but that is just huge. That is one bloom. Look at that. I'm counting that other one too. That's one bloom. That is my hand, and that is huge. I just love touching those. That's cool. Some of these are still pretty clean. That is nice, but they get kind of that brown at the end of their life. But we know the Pinky Winky's doing well, and we also had a Pinky Winky prime bed that I put in towards the end of last year, and it's just not what I thought it was. It looks kind of just like a regular hydrangea to me, but I thought they'd bloom earlier, larger, and they're not doing any of that. It's a smaller bloom than that Pinky Winky. It's blooming later. Look at the Pinky Winky. I mean, it's like rocking already. This one had some frost damage, so we'll give that one another week, and I'll show you what it looks like next week. In this bed over here, I've got something called Sweet Summer and Sunday Frosh, which is just a small version, but they're not doing bad. I just never really come out here. I don't have water going to it. This is supposed to be a hosta garden, and the deer have found it. This is Supertunia Whiteout, I think, and then there's a Superbena with it, with Crocosmia down the middle and Lariatus all around. Crocosmia is not there yet, but that is going to be the rock star of this bed. It's Crocosmia Lucifer, I think it's called, and it is just the coolest flower. I've got one about to start to bloom from last year. I'll show you that if I can get to it. But here is the dedicated vanilla strawberry bed, which is just my favorite. And it's not just my favorite because I cleaned it up. It's my favorite because I have this copper beech. This copper beech is my favorite tree in the yard. I've been wanting one since I saw it at the Arboretum. Big 100-year-old copper beech. But the reason you get these is, look at the trunk. It's almost like, when they get older, it's almost like an elephant's leg. Wrinkly, white, gray elephant's leg. And they just have the coolest white trunk. I don't know. It's just against that leaf too. That leaf almost has gray or white lines on that dark foliage, but that is just cool. And when you get the sun just right, they do have a copper color to it. So you think it's a purple or black leaf, but looking up at the sun, you've got that copper color, which is just awesome. The grasses really kind of make this bed pop too. So this is probably, I think, the most attractive bed that we've got. It's just not mature yet. And vanilla strawberries, if you can imagine a vanilla strawberry 15 foot up in the air with hundreds of hydrangea blooms on it, That's just awesome. And I still need to bury the line here out for the quickfire bed, but the quickfire are, they bloomed really early this year. I thought they'd be more round already. I think it might just take a few years. I'll have to prune them better. And the beauty berries are growing beauty berries. So this little tiny berry is going to be the brightest purple all over this bush. They died down to the base last year, which kind of scared me. The deer really ate them, but the berries are just awesome. So they grew all new foliage this year, and I was worried it wasn't gonna have berries, but I can see them on there already. They have flowers and they have little green berries that are starting. But once those are ready, they'll be like almost a color of purple that you would think would be ice cream or something. It's like a light lavender. I don't know. What do you think, girl?
You hot? Are you hot? You're always hot. You're always hot, aren't you? You're always smiling, though. You are always smiling.
She is a good dog. And over here I've got vanilla strawberries, firelights. We've even got some elderberries. This is the lemony lace. But this vanilla strawberry gets so big it breaks under its own weight. I really should prune it better. But it's so hard for me to prune these hydrangeas that I love because I don't want to lose blooms. I think in my head that I'm going to have less blooms, but in reality I'll have a better structure. This is a big one. I don't know if this is, I think it's a Zinfandel or something. I remember. I bought it with some Pinky Winkies as a quart, and that is definitely grown up. And the lilies are starting to actually bloom. They're way past bloom actually. The tiger lilies don't fit in these garden beds. These are supposed to be blue pink or blue purple beds, and purple or orange just doesn't make sense. But I got really into lilies one year, and some of these lilies are just huge. Look how big that is. What is that? What kind of lily does that? I know what these are. These are Asiatic, I think, but they have got pollen all over them, and Ripley runs through here and will have yellow streaks on her fur because there's so much pollen. But look how long the stamens are on that. Get it off that elderberry. Look at that. And they just jiggle, and it's just the coolest thing. Look how big that is. That's my hand behind it, and that's the lily. I think I actually buy these, and they've got like a little girl or something where her head's right next to it to see how big it is. But that's a big bloom. And I'm not as much into lilies this year or anymore. But if you look at the end of that stamen, look how they just like, I don't know if they're attached or, yeah, they got to be attached, but look how much pollen is just all over that, and it's brown pollen, which is kind of weird. But I've got 2 vanilla strawberries and 1 phantom in this one, and a gentleman said that recently his phantom is his favorite, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this performs. I think I've got water going to him. But it's really hard to stand out when you've got vanilla strawberries right next door or right next to you. And this is just starting, so you can see that panicle. But together they will look like they'll add like 16, it'll be 18 inches at its peak, but that will just be a monster. So in 2 weeks, I think they'll be prime. But just across the way we've got big limelights and another lemony lace elderberry, and lemony lace looks really nice if it gets a little shade, but you can see out here where it gets the sun, it gets really yellow. I don't love that as much. I like that lime green, and against the limelights right now there's not much that's more attractive than a limelight when it's still chartreuse. But this is a 10-foot group of hydrangeas, and they're just starting to bloom. I've got a musclewood here, another one of those big lilies. That's a really yellow one. Should put that by the saffron finch. But these really get bulldozed by Ripley. And then really on this edge here, I've got a lot of vanilla strawberries, but you can tell the difference. Limelights are that chartreuse kind of yellowish look, and then with the vanilla strawberries, you've got that real bright color of white, and that is just beautiful. Lots of red buds. I think we're actually going to take these red buds out. They're doing the best I've ever done, which is kind of sad, but these are dolly hydrangeas, and I just noticed them this morning. It's kind of like the quickfire pinky winky structure. It's very complex. Some of these will bloom, some won't, but on the dollies I just noticed they've got like a little fuzzy star that that is kind of hidden in there, and it's almost like a Gadsby star oak leaf hydrangea that I can never find, but that is really interesting. It's tiny little blooms against the regular hydrangea blooms. It's just stuff I've never noticed until you stop to smell the roses, but I don't stop to smell them enough, I think. That's a beautiful one though, and these stay white longer. It's called dolly, or at least that's what they called it. But we've got the balls up here, the normal hydrangea flowers, and then those fuzzy stars, which I've never really noticed on a hydrangea at all. But here's a crocosmia. It's not blooming yet, but it's just starting to, and it's got such a, this is not doing it the justice of how complex of a flower that is, but it'll look like a dragon's head. They are super cool. I've got a few oak leaves. I think these are all on new wood though. Ripley really bulldozes these, and then the ones that can get some shade do really well, but they bloom on second year wood, so I'm not sure if or when we'll see blooms on that. But we've got some really big vanilla strawberries on the other side here. They're just starting, but not there yet. This one's got so big last year it broke under its own weight. But look at that. That is just such a cool creature. That is just amazing. And that's nothing yet. 2 weeks, that'll be 3-4 times that size. I can't even believe it. I see it every year, and I can't anticipate what each one of these will do. But just one bloom has that much going on the first week. I don't know. That's cool. I think this is a Limelight Prime. They're supposed to be a bit smaller, and it's getting pulled down by bindweed actually. So that's not good. That bindweed is really bad out here. But we get into the more wild stuff. We've got figs that are starting to grow figs. I don't eat them or know how to eat them, but I guess you could. And then you've got the wildflower beds that I've been looking for monarchs every day. I haven't seen any monarch caterpillars yet. We've got a ton of milkweed, and you'd think there'd be one on here. I see the monarch flying around, but I can't find any caterpillars. There's got to be one on here. And I've got vanilla strawberries strewn about the yard. This one doesn't get water, but there's another one back there. But I just love them so much that when I moved in, that was the one to get. I was at the botanical gardens, and of course they have their hydrangeas pruned perfectly, and no joke, it was an 18-inch bloom, just immaculate color. It was still white, had a little bit of pink on the tip, I think, and it just imprinted what a hydrangea should look like to me, I think probably forever. So I've always been drawn to vanilla strawberries. So I definitely have an appreciation for the other ones, but that's the one I would buy if I had unlimited funds, or if I had to choose in a nursery. Vanilla strawberry. Back here we've got pumpkins, which are growing pumpkins, kind of dying in the middle, but we got our first load of mulch, and that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to really make that spot where I have verbena stand out and shine, and hopefully they come back next year, because anytime I put verbena out, it's supposed to be an annual, but I always have some volunteers the next year in that same area. So I'm going to try to make sure that that area is kept weed free and mulched well, and any seeds that fall down or the plant itself will come back, and that'll just be a nice little corner of the yard. So here we go. Well, that just turned out awesome. It is so bright now. This is just a beautiful bed. If those come back every year, I will be ecstatic. It seems like they either seed themselves or the plant actually comes back, but I'll have plants in the same spot next year. And if I keep this clean, weed-free, we'll have that super bright flower all summer. I just love that. That looks so cool. It's like a pink center and the outside is this light lavender that's just beautiful. And they have these leggy stems that I love. It's just a wispy look. And in this fresh mulch, I just think that looks great. That's my favorite bed today. And I've seen a lot of garden beds today. Look at that. I wonder if you can see it from the road. You can, but it's hard not to look at that guy. Vista bubblegum. But a close second is this. Oh, this is the old school Verbena bonariensis. It's definitely my favorite. There's even little butterflies on it. But this is the new one, and it must be better, but I'm not quite seeing it yet. It's got a little stouter stem, I guess, if I really think about it. But it's got the same, it's almost a smaller bloom ball than the other one. So those are almost just circular, and these are just broad blooms. Just 3 bracts on each one. When they're together though, they really look tight. Well, I'll stop talking about my favorite flower today, but thanks for watching. We're gonna have weekly updates on these hydrangeas. A lot changes week by week, and when I go out of town, it looks like a completely different garden than when I left it. So be sure to catch that next week, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.